Dr. Nari Kim brushed the dust away from the stone altar with careful hands. The temple on planet Velthara 9 had been buried for thousands of years, and every movement might damage something precious. Behind her, the rest of the archaeological team worked in silence, their tools scraping softly against ancient rock. "Dr. Kim, you need to see this," called Tae-Yang Park from across the chamber. He was the team's engineer, good with machines and artifacts. His voice sounded strange, almost shaky. Nari walked over to where Tae-Yang stood frozen. The other team members were gathering too. Velmoth, the insectoid Chithari researcher, approached on 6 legs, his antenna twitching with excitement. Lox, the gelatinous Morphean, rippled forward, its transparent body glowing faintly in the dim light. They all stared at the inner sanctum that Tae-Yang had just opened. Inside was a shrine, perfectly preserved, and in the center, sitting on a pedestal of polished stone, was a small object wrapped in faded cloth. "The artifact of ascension," Velmoth whispered. His voice trembled with awe. "After all these years, it exists." The alien team members began to kneel, bow, or lower themselves in whatever way their species showed respect. 12 different species, all united in reverence. Lox was actually crying, its body shimmering with emotion. Nari frowned. She had read the legends, of course. Every archaeologist in the galaxy knew about the supposed divine relic that had transformed an entire civilization thousands of years ago. But she was a scientist first. Legends were just stories until proven otherwise. "Let me examine it," she said, stepping forward. "Careful," Velmoth hissed. "You must show proper respect to the divine object." Nari ignored him. She put on her gloves and carefully unwrapped the cloth. The fabric crumbled slightly at her touch, ancient and fragile. And then she saw what lay beneath. For a moment, she just stared. Then she started laughing. The sound echoed through the temple chamber. Every alien turned to look at her in shock and horror. Velmoth made a clicking sound of distress. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "This is sacred." Nari held up the object. It was a tassel, the kind that students wear on graduation caps. Blue and gold threads hung from a simple loop. Attached to it was a small metal tag that read, "MIT Class of 2089. "This is a graduation tassel," Nari said, still laughing. "It's from my great-great-grandfather's college. He went to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology on Earth." Tae-Yang leaned closer, his eyes widening. "You're kidding." "I'm not. My family has dozens of these. We keep them in a box in the attic. They cost maybe $2 to make." The aliens looked confused and upset. Lox actually shrank back, its body turning a darker color. "Impossible," Velmoth insisted. "The ancient texts speak of this object. It granted the civilization here the power to manipulate fundamental forces, to see beyond the visible spectrum, to transcend physical limitations." "It's just cloth and cheap metal," Nari said. She pulled out her scanner and ran it over the tassel. The device beeped and showed its analysis on the small screen. "See? Polyester fiber, synthetic dye, and a basic metal clasp. Nothing special at all." "But the cave paintings," protested Kryn, one of the avian researchers. "The hieroglyphs describe miracles performed by the being who left this artifact." "Then the hieroglyphs are wrong, or they've been misunderstood," Nari said firmly. She knew she sounded harsh, but she believed in facts over faith. Tae-Yang was examining the shrine more closely now. "Nari, look at this." She walked over to where he was pointing. The pedestal holding the tassel was connected to a complex system of wires and conduits running through the walls. "The temple has power," Tae-Yang said quietly. "After 10,000 years, it still has power." That made Nari pause. She pulled out a more detailed scanner and ran it over the walls. The readings made her frown. "There's an energy source under the temple," she said. "A strong one. It's been running continuously." "See?" Velmoth said triumphantly. "The artifact provides eternal power. It is divine." "No," Taeyong interrupted. "The power source is separate, but it's definitely connected to this chamber somehow." Nari knelt down and examined the base of the pedestal. There were markings carved into the stone, very small and easy to miss. She recognized some of the symbols. They were numbers, mathematical equations. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. "Why would a religious shrine have engineering calculations?" Lox moved closer, its body reforming into a shape better suited for looking at small details. "Those markings appear to be instructions for building something." "A power generator?" Taeyang suggested. "Maybe." Nari stood up and looked around the chamber with new eyes. The walls were covered in paintings and carvings, but now she noticed patterns, diagrams, technical drawings mixed in with the religious imagery. "Dr. Kim," one of the other researchers called. "We found another chamber, behind the shrine." The team moved carefully through a narrow passage that had been hidden behind the altar. The passage led to a small room, barely big enough for 3 people, and there, against the far wall, they found something that made everyone stop breathing. It was a skeleton. Human bones, unmistakable in their structure. The skeleton wore the remnants of a spacesuit, though the fabric had mostly rotted away. Next to the bones sat a small metal box, sealed tight. "A human," Velmoth said, his voice barely a whisper. "A human was here, 10,000 years ago." Nari felt her heart pounding. She approached the skeleton slowly, respectfully. This was one of her own people, lost to time and space. She knelt beside the bones and examined the box. "It's a data storage device," Taeyang said, coming up beside her. "Old style, but it looks intact." "Can you access it?" Nari asked. Taeyang carefully picked up the box and connected it to his portable terminal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered to life. A man's face appeared on the display. He looked tired and sad, but he was smiling. "If you're seeing this," the man said, "then I'm long dead. My name is Commander Jaewon Kang, and I have a lot to explain." The recording paused, waiting for someone to press play again. Nari looked at the skeleton, then at the tassel on the shrine, then back at the screen. "I think," she said slowly, "we need to hear what he has to say." Behind them, the alien researchers gathered close, all their earlier certainty shaken. The divine artifact was a college souvenir. The temple held a human corpse, and nothing made sense anymore. Nari reached out and pressed play. The recording played on the small screen while everyone watched in silence. Commander Jaewon Kang looked directly at the camera, his eyes red from exhaustion. "I crashed here 3 months ago," he said in the recording. "My ship, the New Horizon, had a reactor failure. I'm the only survivor. The natives found me on the 2nd day." Nari listened carefully, her mind racing. 3 months. Jaewon Kang had lived here for only 3 months, yet he had left behind a legacy that lasted 10,000 years. "They think I'm a god," Jaewon continued with a bitter laugh. "I tried to explain that I'm just a pilot, just a man, but they see my tools, my equipment, my ship's technology, and they bow down. It's frustrating and sad." Do-hyun Choi, the human cultural historian, had arrived that morning with a research team from Earth. Now he stood beside Nari, watching the recording with intense focus. Behind them, Ji-Woo Han, a quantum physicist, was scanning the temple's power systems with increasingly puzzled expressions. "The natives are smart," Jaewon said. "Primitive, yes, but clever. They want to learn, so I'm teaching them. Basic principles of science, mathematics, engineering. They don't understand most of it, but they try so hard." The recording showed Jaewon holding up the blue and gold tassel. "They're obsessed with this thing, my graduation tassel from MIT. I wore it during our teaching sessions because it reminded me of home, of learning, of knowledge. Now they think it's magical. I've tried to explain it's just cloth, but they won't listen." Velmoth made a distressed, clicking sound. The insectoid researcher had based his entire career on studying the artifact of ascension. Now he was learning it was just a misunderstanding. "I'm dying," Jaewon said quietly. "The crash damaged my organs. My medical kit can only do so much. I have maybe a week left, so I'm recording this message and hiding it with my body. Maybe someday someone will find it and understand." The recording paused. Jaewon looked tired. So very tired. "I'm leaving the tassel with them, not because it's special, but because it might remind them of what I tried to teach. Question everything. Test your ideas. Learn from mistakes. Graduate to the next level of understanding." The screen went dark. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Do-hyun broke the silence. "I need to translate the wall texts properly. All of them." He spent the next 6 hours working on the temple's inscriptions while the others explored. What he found changed everything. "It's not a religious text," Do-hyun announced to the gathered team. "It's an instruction manual." Nari looked up from her own research. "What do you mean?" "Look at this section here." Do-hyun pointed to a series of carved images. "The aliens drew pictures of Jaewon teaching them, but they're not prayers or rituals. They're experiments." He showed them image after image. What the aliens had called holy ceremonies were actually science demonstrations. Creating fire without wood was Jaewon using a lighter. Capturing images of reality was him using a camera or smartphone. Speaking to the heavens was radio communication. "The sacred thread grants graduation to higher understanding," Do-hyun read from one inscription. "That's not about magic. He was literally teaching them to graduate, to advance their knowledge." Kryn, the avian religious scholar, looked devastated. "Our entire religion is based on these texts. Millions of my people worship the being of light." "The being of light was just a man trying to survive," Nari said gently. "But that doesn't make what he taught any less valuable." Jiwoo called them over to the power system she had been examining. "You need to see this," she said, her voice shaking slightly. The physicist had traced the energy conduits through the entire temple structure. They led to a chamber deep underground. When the team excavated down to it, they found something remarkable. It was a fusion reactor, small, elegant, and still functioning perfectly after 10,000 years. The design was clearly human, matching the technology from Earth's late 21st century. "Jaewon didn't build this," Jiwoo said. "It's too complete, too refined. This took years of work." "The natives built it," Taeyang realized. "He taught them the principles, and they figured out how to apply them." Do-hyun pulled up his translations on his tablet. "Yes, look. The texts describe generations of work. Jaewon gave them the foundation, and they built on it. They created technology that most modern alien species don't have." Velmoth was pacing back and forth on his 6 legs, clearly agitated. "This is impossible. The Chitauri species took 50,000 years to develop fusion power. These beings did it in just a few generations." "Because they had a teacher," Nari said, "and because they treated learning as sacred. Look at how they preserved everything Jaewon taught them." Locks rippled with emotion. "So the miracle was not the object, it was the teaching itself." "Exactly," Do-hyun agreed. "Jaewon didn't give them magic. He gave them the scientific method. Observe, question, test, learn. That's what transformed their civilization." News of the discovery spread quickly through the Galactic Communication Network. Within days, representatives from dozens of species arrived at Velthara 9. Many of them were religious leaders, and they were not happy. "You're saying our holy texts are lies?" demanded one alien priest. Not lies, Nari tried to explain. Misunderstandings. The core message is still true. Learn, grow, advance. But not everyone wanted to listen. Hyun Woo Song arrived with a military escort sent by Earth's government. The young liaison officer had concerning news. 3 alien factions are mobilizing fleets, Hyun Woo reported. They believe the tassel is a key to human technology. They think if they possess it, they can unlock advanced knowledge. Thexor, a reptilian military advisor to the Galactic Council, confirmed the report. War is coming. Species are choosing sides. Those who believe the artifact is divine want to control it. Those who feel betrayed by the revelation want to destroy it. Yuna Lee, a human biologist who had been studying the alien reactions, had an interesting observation. I've been analyzing historical records. Every species that encountered this story advanced faster than their neighbors. Not because of the tassel, but because they adopted the mindset. What mindset? Velmoth asked. Seeking graduation to higher understanding, Yuna explained. The tassel became a symbol of valuing education and knowledge. That mindset drove progress. Nari looked at the simple blue and gold threads sitting on the ancient pedestal. Such a small thing. Such a cheap thing. Yet it had inspired civilizations and now threatened to start wars. We need to make people understand, she said. It's not about the object. It never was. But understanding takes time, and time was running out. On the view screens, ships began appearing in orbit around Velthara 9, weapons powered up, demands were broadcast. The aliens wanted the artifact, they wanted its power, they wanted its secrets, and they refused to believe that a simple graduation souvenir held none of those things. Jaewon Kang had tried to teach the value of knowledge. Now, 10,000 years later, the galaxy was about to go to war over a lesson they had never truly learned. The data log had more recordings. Nari gathered the entire team in the temple chamber to watch them all. If they were going to prevent a war, they needed to understand everything that had happened 10,000 years ago. Jaewon Kang's face appeared on screen again. This time he looked even more tired. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Day 47, he said. I showed them how to purify water today. Simple filtration and boiling. They acted like I performed a miracle. I keep trying to explain these are just natural processes, basic science. They nod and smile, but I know they don't really understand. They see effects without grasping causes. The recording jumped to another day. Day 61. I made the mistake of wearing my graduation tassel during today's lesson. I was teaching them about structure and tension using string. Now they think the tassel itself contains knowledge. I've created a cargo cult. This is exactly what anthropologists warned about. Do-hyun paused the recording. Cargo cult, he explained to the confused aliens. It's when people copy the actions without understanding the reasons. They see the surface, but miss the substance. Velmoth's antenna drooped. That is what we did. For thousands of years. The recordings continued. Jaewon showed the natives how to make better tools, how to find north using stars, how to test if food was safe, simple, practical knowledge. Each time they treated it as divine revelation. Day 73. I'm very weak now, can barely stand, but I keep teaching. It's all I can do. I've been writing down equations, drawing diagrams. Most of it is beyond them, but maybe future generations will understand. Maybe something will survive me. His voice cracked with emotion. I miss Earth. I miss my family. I miss coffee and rain and stupid television shows. I never got to use my engineering degree the way I planned. But maybe this counts. Maybe teaching is its own kind of engineering, building knowledge instead of machines. The final recording showed Jaewon sitting against a wall, the blue and gold tassel in his hands. This is probably my last message. To whoever finds this, please understand something. These people, these aliens, they're not stupid. They're curious and brave and willing to learn. Don't look down on them for worshipping what they didn't understand. We all do that in different ways. He held up the tassel. I'm leaving this with them because they seem to love it. But I'm writing this message for you, the Finder. Tell them, tell everyone, that the real magic was always in what we can teach each other. The tassel is just thread. The value is in what it represents. Graduation, moving forward, always learning. Jaewon smiled weakly. Commander Jaewon Kang, signing off. Be kind to each other out there. The screen went dark. Several people in the chamber were crying. Even some of the aliens showed signs of distress in their own ways. He died alone, Locke said softly, so far from home. But not forgotten, Nari replied. He lived on through what he taught. Hyunwoo stepped forward with his military tablet. The fleet in orbit is demanding we turn over the tassel. They're representing 8 different species now. They say they have historical and religious rights to it. It's a piece of cloth, Taeyang said in frustration. Why can't they understand that? Thexor, the reptilian military advisor, hissed softly. Because they don't want to understand. They want to believe they can possess power by possessing an object. It's easier than doing the work of learning. Yuna had been quiet, studying her data. Now she looked up with an intense expression. I've been analyzing the advancement patterns. Every species that incorporated the Jaewon Kang story into their culture showed measurable increases in scientific progress, but not because of the tassel. Then why? Kryn asked. Because the story encouraged them to value education, Yuna explained. Societies that told their children about the sacred graduation artifact invested more in schools and research. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The belief in the value of knowledge created actual value. So the myth had power, even though it was based on a misunderstanding, Do-hyun said thoughtfully. Exactly. But now that the myth is broken, people don't know what to believe. The situation was getting worse by the hour. More ships arrived in orbit. Some came to claim the artifact. Others came to protect their religious beliefs. Still others came to prevent anyone else from getting an advantage. A coalition leader sent a message that played on all the temple screens. Humans have hidden their divine technology for too long. The artifact proves you have knowledge beyond what you share with the galaxy. Surrender it, or we will take it by force. We don't have secret technology, Nari tried to explain during a broadcast. We developed our advances the same way everyone else can, through research, education, and experimentation. But her words fell on deaf ears. The coalition had convinced themselves of a conspiracy. Humans were hoarding godlike knowledge. The tassel was proof. Nothing would change their minds. Seung-Oh Lim, captain of the human ship Endeavor, contacted Nari directly. We're outnumbered 20-1 up here. If shooting starts, we can't win. Is there any way to convince them? Nari looked at the simple blue and gold tassel sitting on its ancient pedestal. Jaewon Kang had tried to teach the truth 10,000 years ago. He had failed. Now history was repeating itself. I have an idea, she said slowly. But it's going to sound crazy. Crazy is better than nothing, Seung-ho replied. Nari gathered her team. We're going to show them that the tassel has no power, conclusively, undeniably. How? Taeyang asked. We're going to make 10,000 more of them, exactly the same, and we're going to prove they're all identical. Velmoth clicked in surprise. You want to mass-produce the sacred artifact? It's not sacred. That's the whole point. If we can show that any tassel is the same as this one, maybe people will finally understand. Hana Bei, a materials scientist who had recently joined the team, looked interested. I can run a complete molecular analysis, show that there's nothing special about the composition. And I can manufacture exact copies, Taeyang added. Polyester thread, synthetic dye, cheap metal clasp, simple. Hyunwoo looked doubtful. You think making more will convince them it's not special? That seems backwards. It's the only way, Nari insisted. We have to destroy the mystique completely. Make it so common that nobody can pretend it's unique anymore. The plan was risky. It might work. It might make things worse. But doing nothing would definitely lead to war. How long to produce 10,000 tassels? Nari asked. 3 days if we use the fabricators on my ship, Shungo said. Do it, and prepare for a demonstration. Above the planet, weapons charged and tempers flared. Time was running out, and Nari was gambling the peace of the galaxy on a simple truth that Jaewon Kang had died trying to teach. Sometimes the most valuable things are not rare or magical. Sometimes they're ordinary, simple, and available to everyone who's willing to learn. The Galactic Council Chamber orbited Velthara 9, a massive station where representatives from hundreds of species gathered. Today, the chamber was packed beyond capacity. Everyone wanted to witness what the humans would reveal about the sacred artifact. Nari stood at the center of the chamber floor, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes, sensors, and optical organs watching her. Beside her sat 2 containers. One held the original tassel from Jaewon Kang, the other held 10,000 newly manufactured copies. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice amplified through the station systems. "We are here because of a misunderstanding that lasted 10,000 years. I'm going to show you the truth, whether you want to see it or not." Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several delegates stood up, shouting protests. The coalition that wanted the artifact looked ready to storm the floor. Seung-ho Lim stood nearby with a security detail, ready to intervene if necessary. His hand rested near his weapon, though he hoped he wouldn't need it. Nari continued calmly. "I'm going to prove to you that this object has no special power, no hidden technology, no divine properties." She opened the second container. 10,000 blue and gold tassels spilled out onto the floor, a cascade of identical copies. The chamber erupted in chaos. "Blasphemy!" someone screamed. "She's destroying the holy artifact!" "Stop her!" Thexor, the reptilian military advisor, used his authority to restore order. "Let her speak! The council granted her this opportunity." Nari picked up one of the new tassels and one of the original. "These look identical, correct? But you don't believe me. You think the ancient one must be different somehow. So let's test it." Hanabe stepped forward with her scientific equipment. The materials scientist had prepared for this moment carefully. "I will now perform a complete molecular analysis of both objects. The results will be displayed for everyone to see." She scanned the original tassel first. The massive screens around the chamber showed the composition: polyester fibers, synthetic blue and gold dye, a simple metal alloy for the clasp. All common materials. Then she scanned one of the new tassels. The results appeared next to the first scan. They were identical. Exactly the same molecules, same structure, same everything. "There is no difference," Hana announced. "These are the same object, manufactured the same way, using the same materials." "Chemistry can be faked," shouted a delegate from the Luminar species, his crystalline body glowing with anger. "Then test them yourself," Nari offered. "Send your own scientists. Use your own equipment. You'll find the same results." Kix, a respected Luminar Technology Council member, came forward. His species had advanced sensors built into their crystalline structure. He could analyze materials at the atomic level just by touching them. He held the original tassel for a long moment, then picked up a new one. Back and forth he compared them. Finally, he spoke in his resonant voice. "They are identical. I detect no difference in any measurable way." "Then your sensors are wrong," someone else shouted. "Or," Nari said firmly, "you are wrong. This is not a divine object. It never was. It's a graduation tassel from Earth, worth about $2 in our currency. You can buy them in any school supply store." She picked up handfuls of the new tassels and threw them into the crowd. "Here, Everyone can have one. Take them, test them, study them. You'll find nothing special because there is nothing special to find." The chamber descended into arguments. Some delegates grabbed the tassels eagerly, already planning tests. Others refused to touch them, calling them fake. A few sat quietly, thinking. Do-hyun stepped forward to support Nari. "The texts from the temple don't describe a magical object. They describe teaching. Jaewon Kang gave the ancient people knowledge, not power. The tassel was just a symbol, something to remind them to keep learning." "If there's no power in the object," demanded the coalition leader, "then why did the civilization advance so quickly? How did they develop fusion power in just generations when it took my species 50,000 years?" Nari had been waiting for this question. "Because Jaewon Kang gave them something more valuable than technology. He gave them the scientific method." She activated a holographic display showing the temple texts. "Look at what he actually taught. Not prayers, not rituals. He taught observation, questioning, testing, and learning from results. That's the secret. That's what you should be taking from this." Velmoth stood up. The Chithari researcher had been silent until now, struggling with the destruction of his life's work. "She's right," he said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. He was one of the most respected scholars of the artifact. His word carried weight. "I've spent 40 years studying the Jaewon Kang texts," Velmoth continued. "I was looking for magic, for divine intervention. But when you remove that expectation, you see the truth. Every sacred ritual is actually an experiment. Every holy commandment is actually a scientific principle." He walked down to the chamber floor and picked up one of the new tassels. "We worship the wrong thing. We should have worshipped the idea behind it, that anyone can learn, anyone can grow. Anyone can graduate to understanding." Kryn, the avian religious scholar, looked devastated. "What about our faith? What about the millions who believe?" "Tell them the truth," Velmoth said, "that the real divine gift was not an object, but a method, a way of thinking that anyone can use." Yuna presented her research on the advancement patterns. She showed how societies that valued education and learning advanced faster, regardless of whether they had the physical artifact or not. The belief in graduation, in constant learning, that's what made the difference. You don't need the tassel. You need the mindset. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The evidence was overwhelming. The analysis was clear. The original artifact was just cloth and metal, no different from the copies. But accepting this meant accepting that there was no shortcut to knowledge, no divine gift that would instantly grant understanding. Progress required work, study, and time. Some delegates left the chamber angry, refusing to accept it. Others stayed, asking questions, wanting to understand better. The coalition leader stood up slowly. "If what you say is true, then any species can achieve what humans have achieved, just through education and research." "Yes," Nari said. "That's exactly what I'm saying. The playing field is level. We all have access to the same universe, the same physical laws, the same opportunities to learn. Then why are humans more advanced in some areas?" "Because we've been doing the work," Taeyang answered. "Building schools, funding research, encouraging questions. Not because we're special, Bob, but because we invest in learning." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. A ship had broken from the coalition fleet and was accelerating toward the planet. "They're heading for the temple," Seung-ho reported. "They're going to take the original artifact by force." Nari looked at the simple tassel in her hand. Even after everything, some people still didn't understand. They still wanted to believe in easy answers, in magical solutions. "Stop them," she ordered. "We can't let them destroy the temple. It's an important archaeological site." But in her heart, she knew the real battle wasn't over stolen artifacts. It was over ideas, beliefs, and the willingness to accept uncomfortable truths, and that battle was far from won. The rogue ship streaked toward Velthara 9's surface, its weapons hot and ready. Inside, a zealot named Kirsch gripped the controls with trembling appendages. He refused to believe the humans. The artifact must hold power. It must be special. If he could just possess it, unlock its secrets, everything would make sense again. His ship landed hard near the temple, kicking up ancient dust. Kirsch and his followers rushed inside, pushing past the archaeological equipment, heading straight for the shrine. "The sacred object!" Kirsch shouted. "We will take what is rightfully ours." But when he reached the pedestal, he found Taeyang standing there calmly, the original tassel in his hands. "You want this?" Taeyang asked. "Take it. But first, tell me what you think it will do." Kirsch's followers surrounded him, weapons raised. "It will grant us the power of the ancients, the ability to transcend our limitations." "How?" Taeyang remained perfectly calm. "Explain to me the mechanism. How does cloth and metal grant power?" "Through divine energy, through sacred connection to the being of light." "That's not an explanation. That's just words without meaning." Kirsch snatched the tassel from Taeyang's hands. He held it high, expecting something to happen. Light, power, knowledge flooding into his mind. But nothing occurred. It was just thread in his appendages. "Activate," he commanded. Nothing. "Show me your power." Still nothing. He shook it, pressed it to his head, tried to tear it apart. The tassel remained stubbornly ordinary, just a simple graduation souvenir. "Why won't it work?" Kirsch's voice cracked with desperation. A small voice spoke from behind them. "Because you are asking the wrong questions." Everyone turned. A young Chithari, barely more than a child, stood in the temple entrance. It was Ven, Velmoth's offspring. The young one had been studying the temple texts with fresh eyes, unbiased by years of religious teaching. "The god-being Jaewon Kang did not tell anyone to worship an object," Ven said carefully. "He told them to question, to learn, to discover. All the sacred texts say this. Why did we focus on the tassel and ignore the teachings?" Kirsch looked at the young Chithari with confusion. "What? If the being of light wanted us to worship an object, why are all the temple texts full of equations? Why are they about experiments and observations? Why do they tell us to question everything?" The simple logic of the question hit Kirsch like a physical force. He looked down at the tassel in his appendages, really looked at it for the first time. It was just thread. That's all it had ever been. "Then what is sacred?" he asked quietly. "The learning itself," Ven answered. "That is what the texts actually say." Seungho's security team arrived then, weapons ready. But Taeyang waved them back. Something important was happening here, something more valuable than a physical confrontation. Kirsch slowly lowered the tassel. "I wanted so badly for there to be a shortcut, a way to gain knowledge without the work." "Everyone wants that," Taeyang said gently. "But it doesn't exist. Learning takes time and effort. That's the truth Jaewon Kang died trying to teach." The zealot's followers were quiet now, their certainty shaken. One by one, they lowered their weapons. News of the confrontation spread quickly. The peaceful resolution, the young Chithari's simple question, Kirsch's change of heart. It all became part of the growing story. Within days, the Galactic Council made a historic announcement. They would establish a new institution, the Jaewon Kang Memorial Academy, where all species could teach and learn together. The original tassel would be placed at the entrance, not as a holy relic, but as a reminder of what really mattered. Minji Quan, a human educator with experience in cross-cultural teaching, accepted the position of first director. "We're going to teach the scientific method," she announced. Not human science or Chithari science or Luminar science, just science. The universal process of learning about our universe. Sora Zhang, a human artist, created a memorial sculpture for the temple. It showed Jaewon Kang not as a god floating in light, but as a teacher sitting among students of different species. The sculpture's base was inscribed with his final words. The real magic was always in what we can teach each other. Velmoth became one of the Academy's strongest advocates. The elderly researcher had spent 40 years worshipping the artifact, but now he understood his mistake. "I wasted decades looking at the wrong thing," he told his students. "Don't repeat my error. Focus on the method, not the symbol." The Academy's first class included students from 23 different species. They studied together, learned together, and challenged each other's assumptions. The diversity of perspectives led to breakthroughs that no single species had achieved alone. Yuna studied the psychological impact of the revelation. "Some species are still struggling with it," she reported. "But the younger generation accepts it easily. To them, science is more exciting than magic because science is real and achievable." 1 year after the discovery, the Academy held its first graduation ceremony. Thousands of beings from dozens of species gathered in a great hall. Each graduate received a tassel, different colors for different fields of study, different materials to suit different biologies, but all carrying the same meaning. Ven, the young Chithari who had asked the right question in the temple, was among the graduates. The young one had studied quantum mechanics and showed remarkable aptitude. "How does it feel?" Nari asked, adjusting Ven's tassel. "Strange," Ven admitted. "A year ago, I thought these were magical. Now I know they're just symbols. But somehow that makes them more meaningful, not less." "Why is that?" "Because if they were magic, only special people could have them. But as symbols of learning, anyone can earn one. That's better." Nari smiled. "Jaewon Kang would have liked you." The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence for the pilot who had died alone on a distant world, never knowing the legacy he would leave. His simple act of teaching, his refusal to pretend to be a god, his insistence on truth over comfort, all of it had led to this moment. In orbit above Velthara 9, a human cargo ship prepared for departure. Its hold was full of tassels, millions of them, ready to ship across the galaxy. Blue ones, gold ones, red ones, green ones, every color, every style, every variation. The most worshipped artifact in galactic history had become the most common item in galactic commerce, and that proved Jaewon Kang's point more powerfully than any argument could. The value was never in the object. It was always in what the object represented. Graduation was not an ending. It was a beginning. Permission to start learning what comes next. And across the galaxy, in schools and laboratories and research stations, millions of beings were finally ready to graduate from magical thinking to scientific understanding. The lesson that took 10,000 years to learn had finally been understood. Jaewon Kang's graduation tassel still sat in its place of honor at the Academy entrance. Not behind protective glass, not surrounded by guards. Just sitting there, touchable, ordinary, available to anyone who wanted to see it. Because that was the whole point. The most valuable things in the universe are not rare and locked away. They are common, accessible, and free to anyone willing to do the work of learning. The galaxy had worshipped a $2 souvenir. Now they finally understood why it was priceless. Not because of what it was, but because of what it taught them about themselves. And somewhere in the archives, Jaewon Kang's final recording played on loop for visitors. His tired smile, his simple truth, his last message to the future. Be kind to each other out there. They were trying. Finally, after all this time, they were really trying.